Welcome to the Spinwhiz Comics Show.
Whoa.
From Raleigh, North Carolina. Join us for exclusive interviews with the publishers bringing you the newest titles in indie comics, webcomics, movies, and more.
No way.
And now, here's your host, Jeff Palumbo.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream. It is fantastic to see you. We haven't done this in a while. I think it's been about a week because I was out of town working, and life is crazy. You know, what are you going to do? Sometimes stuff happens, but you're here now. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. This is the Spinwhiz Comics Show. If you've never been here before, you never kind of jumped on. Our big thing is Spinwhiz Comics hosts a bunch of indie content. Our goal is to help readers such as yourselves discover indie content that you may have not seen before. And why? Because there's a ton of great indie content out there, but there's also a ton of shitty content out there. So what I try to do is I try to work with all these publishers that have fantastic content that I personally like. Everybody, of course, gets a shot, but I try to help these fantastic individuals. We try to work as a team instead of just putting content up on a site like Comixology, and you have to find it, and they don't care anyway. I try to help them to get bigger, to gain a following, and to have you guys read their stuff because it's that good. We don't host content that we don't think is that good, or at least has some nugget of what somebody may like, because it is subjective. But tonight, I have a special guest. He's fantastic. I have been talking to this gentleman for probably about a year and a half. I'll get into that with him with a little bit. He has a comic called Group of Seven, which we've been promoting for quite some time now. It's fantastic. I don't know if he's great. On email, he seems fantastic. We've talked a little bit before this, also fantastic. So I hope the interview goes great. But at the end, I want you to at least read number 1 of Group of Seven. But I don't understand why I'm just talking to you. I have Chris Sanagan here with us. Let me switch over and bring this nice gentleman on. Chris, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you for being here. I'm going to fix your screen a little bit. It looks a little jacked up for whatever reason.
All right.
Welcome. Thanks, man. I understand it's late. We usually do this at 9 p.m. Eastern, and there are people that I've interviewed that are literally nodding off. Not because of me. I don't take it personally anyway. It's possible that it's because of me, but I don't think so.
Well, let's not hope not. Yeah. I mean, we got some time to talk about some interesting content, and
I appreciate that.
Should be good.
Yeah. I love it. So let's start with, you have this comic, Group of Seven.
Yep.
Let's get into it, and then I want to go backwards through time and ask you some questions. So
yeah, sure.
I'm going to link Group of Seven from Spinwhiz Comics right into the chat. So the people that are here watching live, you're welcome to kind of access it and put this into the background. If you are actually coming in on the podcast, don't sweat it. The links are in there. If you are on YouTube right now watching, welcome. The link's right below in all Chris's information. So he's not going anywhere. You can find this great stuff. Yeah. And don't worry about the screen that you see over here. This whole thing over here is Skype being a real pain in the ass. So I don't know. It just keeps bouncing in and out, and I don't know why. We're going to go to Zoom next time. But anyway, tell everybody what Group of Seven is really all about. And, just your general synopsis, because I want them to kind of feel like, well, damn, that's something I like. 'Cause I liked it. I liked the premise when you had it. I think we found each other on Instagram.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I was like, oh, this looks pretty good. We got to talking a little bit, and then I started following up. I'm like, this is good. So
it's how all great relationships start. You find each other on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then you start falling over each other. You're like, I like the way you look. I like what's going on here.
Random side note before Group of Seven, I actually met my wife on MySpace.
What?
When MySpace, yeah. I mean, that goes to show you how old I am.
That's an amazing. What was the first friend you used to get on MySpace? Remember?
Tom?
It's the guy, the MySpace guy, right? It was like the first friend of your, yeah.
I don't
that's dating yourself.
I don't think I ever deleted him. I mean, to be honest, it was right when Facebook hadn't, we were both going to school. Facebook hadn't really gone to everybody yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in that next year, when my wife and I met on MySpace, we actually transitioned over to Facebook because she was at USF and I was at Syracuse.
Yeah.
And then then it kind of switched over. So we met there, but
I was gonna say that I remember I was in grad school when the Facebook, like so for all you folks out there, I'm from the Toronto area and Canada, and I went to University of Toronto, and I remember I went to library school basically for my grad program. I'm an archivist in my day job.
oh my gosh.
Historical records, there's the connection to the comic book, right?
Yeah.
And I'll get into that, but I remember definitely being as part of our library school, being like, hey, have you heard of this new thing, Facebook? I think there's only like 3 schools got it. It's like Cornell, it's like U of T, it's something else. I don't know, but I remember very much being in that space where this thing was like popping up and people were losing their shit over it.
People were going nuts, and I remember I hated MySpace because people
I used to go for go ahead, sir.
Well, they'd be jazzled or bedazzled, but whatever it was, their pages, and there'd be sparkles everywhere. I'm like, what kind of place is this?
Right. So it's basically become Instagram stories, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah. You're right. I used to MySpace at all time. That was where the band info was, like who's touring. That was my whole thing. Was always MySpace was like finding out the listings, concert listings, like what's coming to town.
Mm-hmm.
I
think that's still what it's used for, right? If it's even used.
is still used.
Justin Timberlake turned it into like a music platform.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't seen anybody.
I want to believe that.
Now I really want to look to see if it's. Give me 1 second. I kind of want to see if it's up. I mean, not my account. I'm not going to put it on the screen.
It's got to still be running.
Oh my gosh. It is still running.
So then who's running it?
I think, Justin Timberlake definitely owns a good chunk of it still.
Okay. All right.
But now it's like, now it goes into like movies and TV, and now it's almost like a really shitty, one of those news sites that's like clickbait on the bottom of websites. Like 6 things that look at what they look like now. Look at the Harry Potter cast now. That's exactly what that looks like when I log into it.
Oh my gosh, that is wow. I didn't even know, but now I gotta check it out now.
This is why we talk, Chris.
I think so, and I hope everyone else picks up on it, and suddenly MySpace gets like a crazy uptick in viewership.
Yeah, let's hope we get a crazy uptick in viewership first.
Good point.
Maybe I can get us on MySpace. I'll call them.
Yeah,
I bet you right now they'd probably love to get any type of content on MySpace.
The line goes straight to JT.
It really. Oh,
it's just
honestly, if I could meet JT, I mean, I'm not gay in any way, but at the same time, you can't deny that the man is like a triple threat.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I mean, if we really want to go into deconstructing the value of NSYNC. I mean, I think, there's one star. Come on, there's one star to that group.
Yep. Which is why the Backstreet Boys failed miserably.
Right. But then they have this like resurgence, right? Like
with New Kids on the Block.
Right. So it's cyclical, man. It's pretty wild. I was actually in Vegas like a year ago with my wife. Just like we were there for going to Vegas, and the hotel we were staying at was like Backstreet Boys every night, 2 shows. I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
holy cow!
I know, and I kept thinking to myself, that's like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like right? Like I don't know. That's you got to put 2 shows every day. That's like a zoo.
Yeah,
it's or like circus level,
Yeah, and so when they were popular, I was probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 11.
Right.
Because I'm 41 now.
Okay.
So, and they when they were touring, they were probably 15, 16, 17 maybe.
Yeah.
And I think Donnie was the old bag that was,
Oh, from New Kids.
Yeah, from New Kids.
Yeah.
Backstreet Boys, I think, was closer to college.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds about right. Because I'm just about to turn 40 in this year, so you and I must have the same. We'll have had the same cultural imprints, right? Of things like that for sure.
But you still have your hair.
I still have my hair for. Yeah, I know it's nice, right?
It is. It does look nice. It's nice and plush.
I think so. Yeah. Well, see, my dad still has his like full set. He's like 72, 71. I don't know, it's early 70s, and he's still got it. And it's like salt and pepper. I'm like, God damn it! That's hopefully what I'm tracking for.
That's amazing. Like I'm screwed, man. It's just there. It's not. It's not. There's a battle going on, and I'm pretty sure that everything that was up here near the dome is just retreating backwards and finding other places to pop out.
Right.
So
completely unplanned.
I mean, you just What I don't know if I'd give anything to give hair back because it's all right to be bald. Like
I think so. Yeah.
But who's going to tell me I'm 6'2", 220? I mean,
also true.
And
also true.
I'm 40, and how many shits I give is really
Isn't that
slimming
great?
out.
Isn't that great though? How that comes with age and perspective is like the shits you give, ratio is just so completely different than when you were 25 years old.
Yeah, and I heard at 50, you go straight from shits to Fs. I'll keep it remotely PG-13 so YouTube doesn't but
that's probably good point.
Yeah. So like right from 0 shits to 0 F-bombs. And in 50 you just don't care. You're just like I've lived to 50 and I don't care.
Right. I survived the average lifespan of a human being, 200, 300, 400 years ago was, 50. Now I've passed it. So take that life.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
I won the game.
Yeah. I want to just be sitting out at a restaurant at a Comic-Con in 9 years and be sitting outside with a big thing of bourbon and a cigar with my feet up, just drinking after a hard day of like talking about comics and hanging out with people, which doesn't sound awful. And when somebody comes up and they're like, sir, you're too old to be here. And all I say is F off. And I just keep drinking and I keep smoking, but I smile doing it.
And truthfully, when you go, kind of taking the conversation into comics territory, but when you go to the cons and, you're meeting the folks who are putting out, either they're mainstream or they're indie or whatever that happens to be, like they've been doing it for, decades plus. And, they're not young folks. They are often, there's up and comers for sure. But the kind of guest talent that those shows tend to draw, when you start talking to them, like, oh, you've been doing this for 20 plus years, you're, in your 40s or 50s or whatever it is. Right. You know what I mean? Like the ratio of elder statesmen, and then there's some like real folks who come out. I was at a show in Niagara Falls, and I don't know the name, but it was a gentleman who was drawing, contemporary of Kirby kind of thing,
Wow.
And and like had comics like the World War II era, like comics, Liberty X, those kinds of titles, and it was pretty cool talking to him and being in this world for 50 or 60 years.
Mm-hmm. Like that. Yeah. That just blows my mind. I mean, we should do a comic about him.
Exactly. Right. And his sense of perseverance, right.
I would like to sit with him, get him just remotely hammered and just ask him what he thinks about people. And now.
You gotta start. Yeah. Right. Get his opinion on, for sure. You gotta start bringing that bottle of bourbon that you just talked about to just to the cons and just,
it's in my room. I make
waiting
sure.
for the next con.
I make sure. Yeah. Speaking of that, I was on. We interviewed Dre Daniels a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Who does another comic? He just launched his own, and we came up with an odd sense of cons. And what we're finding is that there are the old school guys, like we just talked about, who have been there, done that twice, and now they're being asked to change again because they went from pencil and ink straight up into trying to transition to digital, and now they are having to transition into social media with digital,
right?
Because they have to become a brand, because they have become influencers. The popular ones are becoming influencers, and they can't transition into it. It's not there. And then you have the young guys who are the up and comers, who don't know how to stop talking, and the fact that I've met so many I will call them young adults that are between the ages of 18 and 24, who I go up and talk to, and they're like, dude, we just had a Kickstarter. We're killing it. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. How many people, backed you? They're like 50. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like, thank you for blowing me off, but you don't have a clue. Yet their social media they post a lot. Not a lot of people like them.
Yeah.
And then you have us.
In the middle.
You have people who work full time, who usually have families, who have been there and done that, at least in the digital era, and are transitioning easily or more easily into social media and influence.
Yeah. Right.
And we see where all these old guys come from and have huge respect for them, but wish they would transition because there's great art there. And then you have the young guys who you wish they had their flair and their ability to work and like to drink all night and still wake up at 7 a.m. and draw. And so we're kind of stuck in that middle where we're the ones that have to gravitate left or right and kind of bring them both in. Do you see the same thing happening when you go to cons?
I think it's usually when we go to cons and shows, a couple of things are kind of apparent. Like one thing we find is, we have a social media presence, but it's not overwhelming, right? It's, it is what it is. I think it's like 400 plus on Twitter, and, we both have a couple of, 300 plus on Instagram, and I've got like a personal account on Twitter, like at Facebook, like those kinds of things. And it's funny because I always find when we talk to new people, and they're often younger than us, which is fine, and they're often out of art school, so they're like, they've got the chops, and they're absolutely, I never went to school for this, even in a writing sense. Like writing for me was, this is my first attempt at fiction. Like I've produced like scholarly articles, and I've done like nonfiction articles for like newspapers and blogs and things, usually about history type things, but never a story. So it's different learning curve for me, but I find that anyway, like with these, with a lot of younger creators, I find their social media presence is like astounding. Like I look at it and I'm incredibly impressed. Like 10, 12, 20,000 followers on whatever channel that you want to put out there. Now, saying that, it's incredible having this digital following, this community that absolutely will advocate and support and champion your work. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily translate to table sales.
Correct.
It doesn't really translate into connections you make. Or, like, for example, like when you and I started talking, again, the Instagram thing, and then you reached out, and then we had a back and forth about 6 months on email. As like, hey, I'm going to share. And I think I asked you for like your business plan and stuff, just because, we're in a part of our lives where we've been in careers for a decade plus, after school. And so these are notions that come to us much more, kind of automatically of like, well, not just starting a partnership on it because they like your work. It's like, well, let's know because we're now mature and adults about this, and how does this work? Yeah. And so I find that again, I'm blown away by the reach that some of these folks have, and then at the same time, you marry it against like say performance at a con or being able to make more meaningful or maybe more productive relationships, and that isn't always there as well. And I think your point about talking too much, or just even having general, like, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to sound I don't want to come off as like too old, I'm not trying to
you old bastard.
Yeah, exactly. and think of it like generationally. We're not trying to like generationally talk, but like, okay, for example, like you're mentioning like our actual demographic is from a time where we overlapped with non-digital to digital. Like we had a life before the internet. Like we very much remember like I remember using a typewriter in grade 8, like for, what I mean? Like to a school assignment, I remember then, and we developed with the, like we kind of grew with the various format developments. So like I remember getting Encarta on CD-ROM for geography stuff. Right? Like I remember the internet coming, and I remember everyone going, "What? This is insane." I remember my buddy, I still have it somewhere, saying, "Dude, you got to get on email." I'm like, "What?" I was writing letters, like corresponding with a friend over summer.
PayPal,
you know what I mean?
Or pen
Dude,
pals.
you gotta get an email. Well, what is this email? Like all these things, and so then we have like I got a couple of kids, that are 6 and 9, and they'll only ever know access to digital.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's iPad, like anything, right? Like, so, and even the difference between my two kids of one picking up how to use an iPad via touch versus the second one 2 years younger is astounding to see the development of like a kid, 2 years younger, it's just that much quicker, just that much more automatic.
Yep. And
so, it's interesting because I think that audience or that market or that age group or whatever demographic, they've had this access to these tools, but there is a market there is an older market, which is still like a 30-year span of people, like say us to retirement, who still want to interact very much in a hybrid way, like want to have access to the digital, like us, media on Instagram, but also want to have a face-to-face meaningful conversation at a con and have that, like almost like old school being in retail. Yep. Like you want to, like I did retail definitely in high school, university, and right. And like those experiences of just having interaction and like social conversation and understanding, like that kind of those kind of constructs, like certainly I think have helped us try to bridge both those two kind of worlds and try to get the best out of both of them.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. And I didn't want to sound negative either, talking about either the older people or the younger. There's a ton of talent on both sides. What I meant is the talent is there on both sides, and it seems like our demographic has both types. Where you have the super, like, you said it perfect. It's like a hybrid of old school and new school. You have the old guys that are out there that they refuse to touch social media.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's killing you. And then you have the young guys who are like, dude, I know everything. And not all of them. And I'm not saying all of them.
No. Yeah, that's true.
There is
but you're
a spattering of this that happens, obviously. And they're like, I don't, what can you do for me? Oh, you only have X amount of people visiting your site. I'm good because you can't help me right now. And I'm like, you're not getting the whole scope of business. So I find it interesting that the most of the people we have on the site on Spinwhiz Comics right now are people just like you and I. I would say 90% of the people are in the age group of 35 to 45.
Right.
Which is so weird because there's tons of content both places.
Yeah. And I find it amazing when, and again, engaging, through social channels is obviously a choice. But I find it incredible when I, say I buy a new book or whatever, and I go to tag someone in it just to be like, your book's amazing, man. I love it. Right.
I do that.
I want to put that public shout out. Right. And they're not on it. And I'm like, I mean, obviously it's choice, and maybe they don't like I don't know, whatever. But at the same time, unless you maybe don't need the exposure because you are at a level that is you're already getting the exposure, you don't require it at any length. There's a number of like in between folks who I'm always surprised just from a marketing perspective of whether it's brand development or whether it's just like audience growth I'm a little surprised if you're not on some of these channels because you have fans who are advocating and championing your work, whatever reason you're not on there, could be whatever. But, for some folks who are kind of caught in that middle of, they're not like superstars, but they're still putting out incredible work. Like, how you are not leveraging that sometimes surprises me.
I agree. Anyway, I'm glad we got that out of the way. We're going to solve that problem later. And just to let you know, your mic just started rubbing on your zipper.
Oh, shirt?
Yep. Or whatever it might be. So just want to let you know in case.
No. Different show.
That's Spinwhiz late night.
That's Twitch.
That's after hours.
I say Twitch after dark.
Yep. Anyway. I love it.
All right.
That's exactly what it is. That's a whole different show.
That's a whole other show. I'm going to hold this out.
That is a subscription basis only.
That's the next. To be fair, that's the next business venture.
You say that, yet I have been asked by multiple people, both publishers and readers, if they're like, "Hey, we like your platform? Are you going to get into like the lewds and the nudes and everything?"
Yeah. I would. What is the stat on internet traffic on any given day that is responsive to that community? or responsive to those human needs.
Yeah.
Like, overwhelmingly, right? Like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. So, most of the people that use the internet use it to surf porn.
Straight up.
And then it's work or then it's social media, and then it's work. Like work is almost last.
Right.
But porn is like above and beyond. Like everything else together doesn't even equal the amount of porn that is viewed per day.
Right. If you took everything else and combined it, it still wouldn't. Yeah.
Maybe I'm in the wrong business. I mean,
maybe
I'm in the perfect business. I don't need to be in that business, but
right.
I'm old and balding, and I am past my prime. Let's just say that. So anyway,
there's always an audience to this.
And there is.
Yeah.
But you have a comic here too. I guess we should probably talk about that. We can talk
comics.
That's a whole other show. I love it.
A whole other show.
So
I'm glad you like
Group of Seven.
Group of Seven
is how we started talking.
Yep.
Can you give people a quick synopsis? We have one on our site, which I've asked you permission to read after we've kind of talked about Group of Seven.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to try my movie voice, my movie trailer voice, and then. But can you kind of give, what the book itself is about, and then how you kind of came up with it?
Yeah, of course. So Group of Seven is an action-adventure comic book series that's set during World War I. And it takes, basically, it's a team book. It's a team of very, at the time, kind of famous soldiers get together on a secret mission, kind of like an Expendables-like type mission to save the world. Is basically what it is. So it is very much whenever we talk about it at shows or we're kind of introducing folks to it, obviously it's got that historical element to it. It is set during 1917. So the design is comes from that era. It's black and white.
Which is dope, by the way.
Thank you very much. It has that feel to it for sure. It's all tones and sepias and shadows, and I can't stress the artist Jason Lapidus is incredible on that. And so but it's very much like it takes its cue from our love of things like Indiana Jones and those kinds of, I'd say, like I always say, things like Daring Do and punch ups and one liners and saving the world. Like it's very much in that vein of almost pulpish action adventure series, Flash Gordon, Indiana Jones, but set during World War One. And when folks talk about it, and then I say, oh yeah, and it's also got like monsters and secret laboratories and explosions, and
like you're supposed to have.
all that stuff that happened in World War One.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well,
yeah, exactly.
Well, I think,
and then it's in all. Yeah, go ahead.
No, keep going. I have a comment to give you after. That's a good thing, I hope.
Okay, cool. And then specifically, on top, so that's one level to look at it, one lens, and the next one is it is about 7 Canadian soldiers, and these soldiers, these men, end up actually becoming like major figures in the 20th century, both in Canada and around the world. So they're often they're known commodities. They're obviously much more known in Canada, but a few of them have like international reputation. So part of it is also this idea that they were all in their 20s at the time this conflict breaks out, and they're young and they join up, and then you marry that against what they become, and it's just kind of like a fascinating look into a younger life of these. Often we describe these kind of lions of the 20th century.
And I think one of the things I like, you can tell that you grew up in the 80s. in the action movies that you watch by reading it, which is fantastic, because again, being that we both grew up in the 80s, I'm like, oh, this is, and it's quick. It pops. Like you're flying through and you're letting the artist, Jason, right?
Yep.
He does a good job at really moving the content and putting you through the story without it needing a lot of words. And the black and white, because of the time, when it's in World War I, it still gives you like a feeling of, I don't have any other adjective for it, but it almost gives you a feeling of dread through the whole thing. Like as though there is a doom beyond what, like,
because it literally lacks color. Like it literally lacks life to it, or whatever. Anyway, yeah.
Like it's so, like the war is so bad that there's no color in it. That's kind of, I guess that's more of what I was saying. There's just
Okay.
there's all this jacked up stuff going, and parts of it are funny. I mean, there's one-liners in there that you're ripping. And I'm like, oh damn, that's nice. But there is that. At least the color for me, knowing that it was World War I, just made it feel like there was just an overlying overlap of doom. And I was like, this is awesome. The way that it is done, and the coloring and the stitching and stuff like that. I thought it was awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, not to get too, historical or political or anything, but I mean, certainly that conflict in the history of global conflicts is seen as the last major global conflict that really is the it's the end of the old regime in Europe. So it's like the aristocracies are ending, the nation building piece, the colonial piece. So it's really like the end of this couple hundred years of these kind of great powers, or these monumental entities kind of coming to a close, and then the 20th century is birthed kind of after that, right? So and it's so demonstrably, not to say that again, like the World War I, World War II have such different they're so demonstrably different in how they start and why people how they were fought, and certainly why they were fought. That World War I is often this the kind of, it's not a lost war, but it's often like why. Like, what was the purpose of that one, right? Like, to redraw some of the lines in Europe, like, and involve the whole world. Like, it very much has that, and certainly being the Canadian and having Canada as, at that point, part of the British Empire, it's really imprinted hugely in Canada. And so if you go to anywhere, like, so again, I live in Guelph, which is about an hour west of Toronto. It's a town of about 130,000 people. And if you drive to any small town anywhere around here, there's like every town has a memorial to the First World War, every town, because every town sent people, from the farms, from the factories, whatever it was. So at the time, the impact on society is massive, and the years after following it. So, but it's often seen as, and I think probably rightfully so, as like, again, it had its reasons, and I'm sure there are many academic books that will go into much more deep level on it. But there's no real outcome of it except that, generally speaking, I should say, no real outcome except that a couple of countries in Europe beat a couple other countries in Europe. That's really putting it completely, probably too shallow, but. Anyway, so I think you're right. I think it probably does lend itself that sense of like, and it's just total devastation. It's just total. Yep. It's just right. I mean, and then the actual fighting itself, and like that, the look of like a trench, right? I mean, we can't even fathom it, now in this day and age. And so those kinds of pieces all feed into those senses and the feel of the book. And I think the black and white. Truthfully, we started black and white because we just didn't know how to color, or at least we weren't sure how to.
Well, it saved you $135 a page.
Yeah, right, exactly. We weren't quite sure how to approach it. And Jason has taught art and has run art classes, but this was, again, his first published comic work. He's always been a doodler, but never, this is him putting himself out there for the first time. Yeah, I know, it's incredible. And so, and then so to see that and to know that we could do the shades, the tones, we loved it, but he would kind of, the covers are color, and that's his kind of, he's learning and he's growing and he's playing with the covers to kind of supplement that piece. But, we kind of said, we'll do it in black and white. Because again, you're right. We didn't have a colorist. But it was, I think once we started, we just knew we just wouldn't go back.
Oh, and you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for sure. And you have, issues 1 through 6 right now. You have a trade paperback coming out in sometime in the spring ish.
Yeah, hopefully early May. That's what we're targeting.
Okay. And then you told me that or I saw a post earlier that was you're going on a 7.
Yeah. Yeah. So this really, again, what started as a project. I think a lot of these things start this way. As, can we do it? Can we accomplish this thing in this medium that we love? And said, yeah, we can do it. And then by the time we got to issue 2, 3, 4, and we're like, oh, we're going to close it off soon. I started thinking about the next arc, because really the trade paperback covers issues 1 to 6, and that's like the full first story arc, volume 1. And then we started introducing characters into the books that basically come to fruition starting issue 7. And then building upon the universe, because really, again, as it's this kind of pseudo historical alt reality version really of some of these pieces, once you kind of open the doors to history, which is, I mean, I mentioned professionally, that's certainly what I do in my day job. It really allows you to play with with history. And so, and suddenly all these characters who, have not necessarily been forgotten, but have maybe not, certainly have not been dealt in this medium and certainly in this way, become kind of fair game. And so then it's like, oh, great, now we can add this person or reference this event or have it placed here. Because really what the story is the people were real. Obviously the tale is fictional, but the events were real. And so we just kind of play with the gaps in between, and then to your point earlier, and I think you're definitely nailed it with the 80s reference for sure.
Yeah.
That is so much a part of like my love for pop culture coming from that era, like big time. And so it was all about like how do we make a fun, exciting, enjoyable story. Like history, especially Canadian history, it is so near and dear to me. Having chosen professionally to work in it, and go to grad school and do all that kind of stuff. But to then be able to insert references to whatever people or places of a subject matter that I deeply love, and then put it into a comic book, and then people have to buy that comic book it's an incredible feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were talking before you came on that we don't really make yourself, myself, and a lot of other people don't do this to make money necessarily, even though we'd love to eventually. Sure. Yeah, it's being able to write a story and have people just get it and read it and be like, and give you feedback, and hopefully it's positive, but sometimes if you have negative, it's not a bad thing. It's no. Well, be like, oh, I didn't like it because, now if you're just being an asshole and you don't like it because you're like, it sucks. Why is there no adamantium in this? And I'd be like, well, because you're reading the wrong story. You can read 17 million Marvel comics if you like, and I'm sure there's adamantium all throughout that. But
exactly.
The gist is the love of storytelling, at least for me. And a lot of the artists, it's the gist of bringing stories to life.
For sure.
So what made you, I mean, your day job is obviously historical based, right? Yep. But how did you were like, you know what? I'm going to write a comic.
You know what? I'm going to write an action. Yeah, no, totally. So
an action comic, nonetheless.
Yeah. An action comic. I know. So yeah, right. A lot of that comes from, well, actually the genesis of it is, so I live in Guelph, but I actually work in Toronto, in like the north end of Toronto. So I commute, and I was on the train commuting back and forth, and we were actually preparing. I was in my day job. We were doing work around the centennial of the First World War, so 2014, so 100 years. So we were looking at whatever, we're doing our own programming, and I started thinking about specifically the Canadian soldiers. So many of them who ended up doing these unbelievable things later on in life, who were just young soldiers at the time. We're talking like future. I got like a future Prime Minister of Canada. I've got,
oh damn,
the guy who discovered insulin, so Frederick Banting. So these are all soldiers, and so I'm like, oh my god, they all enlisted, and then so I started thinking it is oh my, how crazy it would be to have a story where they all kind of knew each other or in their 20s, right? And how kind of cool that would be. And then comic books for me have always been. I'm not going to say that it's always been a part of my life, because they actually haven't. Like, to be very, very honest, I maybe like a lot of folks, I go in and out. I have gone in and out of comic books. Been peaks and valleys, and it just seemed like a really cool medium to tell a story. And Jason and I have been friends since our university days. Our girlfriends at the time, who both became our wives, were like, or still are, I should say, were university friends, and we were in each other's wedding parties, and Jason and I have always been, so we met when they introduced us, like went to a bar in Toronto. It's like, oh, it's time for our boyfriends to meet, and so we met, and we were literally like, it's kind of awkward because you're like, I don't, we never met, like, are we gonna get along, and so we started talking about three things, like, what are you into? And I'm like, she's like, do you like hockey? I'm like, I love hockey, and it's like Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm like, Toronto Maple Leafs, love Leafs. And he's like, the Leafs. Okay, great. We got the Leafs to talk about. Awesome. Sports. And he's like, do you like comics? I'm like, I love comics. He's like, do you like cartoons, like Batman the animated series, like the Bruce Timm? And I'm like, oh, I love Bruce Timm. I love that animated series. Like, I love the whole universe they created. Oh, awesome. So we can talk comics. And he's like, what about music? I'm like, do you like Wilco? He's like, I love Wilco. I'm like, let's talk Wilco. So between Wilco and the Toronto Maple Leafs and Bruce Timm's Batman the animated series, we forged a very close friendship. And awesome. So we've been in each other's lives for a while, and our kids play together. And now we don't live in the same town anymore, but so I had this idea, and I brought it to him, and I literally, our kids were playing in the park. We took the kids to the park, and I said, I have this idea of this comic book, and I don't know, what do you think? And he said, well, we'll walk you through it. And I said, okay, well, here's all the characters. And he goes, that guy. I'm like, yeah, they're all in Europe together. And like, that's the other cool thing about the book, is that they are literally all in Europe at the time the story takes place in April 1917. They are physically there. So I just put them in one spot.
That's awesome.
But they are all right, exactly. And crazy, right? And kind of uncanny. And so we put them in, and I'm like, and here the title is Group of Seven. He goes, I'm in. I'm in. And if for those out there, so if I sent you Group of Seven, does that mean anything to you beyond the title? Like, have you heard that title before?
I know of like the Dirty Dozen, Expendables, stuff like that. I mean, obviously these aren't Dirty Dozen because these are actual like really nice guys instead of real dirtbags. But Group of Seven in general doesn't mean anything to me. Okay, so
Group of Seven are probably still the Group of Seven is probably the most well-known Canadian art group of painters.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right. And they basically in the 10s, 20s, and 30s really defined. It's probably stereotypical now when you talk about Canadians and Canadian art, but at the time they would go out and paint like Northern Ontario and the beautiful outdoors and the woods and those kinds of things, and they received global recognition for it. And so when we talk about, say, like art royalty, painting royalty in Canada, this Group of Seven really were it. And part of this is that a few of them were in the war, including one of the characters, A.Y. Jackson, who's one of the group. He's like the navigator in the group. And so he's in the Group of Seven. So we're like, oh, and so, for us, obviously our audience, is Southwestern Ontario and is very heavily Canadian based at the moment. Yeah. Which is another reason why we were super happy to get involved with Spinwhiz, by the way, is because we want to share the story with as many people as possible, and that goes beyond our borders. So thank you again for reaching out in the first place.
You're welcome. Thanks for having awesome content.
Yeah, thanks, man. Anyway, so people, like a Group of Seven, who go, oh, like the artist, and then where I was like, well, kind of, and then, but it's the lure. That the title means something definitely north of the border here at the Group of Seven, and people like the artists. I'm like, well, and then we talk a lot. One guy's in the book, but a couple of them were actually in the war. They were war artists, and so there's connections there. But that's kind of how it started. And Jason was like, Group of Seven. He's like, I'm on board. Let's do this thing. And then I said, okay, well, let's. I'll try writing a prologue. I'll try it. And I wrote like a prologue, and then he's like, I love it. And I'll start doing character sketches. Like, okay. And then little by little, we released content online. And then suddenly we were in the position where the first issue was ready. And then it was available digitally. And then we printed it, and then we sold out of the first printing, and we went to a second, like all these things.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, it's been really, it's been super quick in terms of, it's just been like, again, to your point earlier, we're not selling that we can quit our day jobs, but at the moment we're at the point where a lot of what we do, whether we show or go to cons, like basically pays for the next printing. So, we're at that point, and so we love it so much, and it's been positively received generally, and so we're just kind of making more comics.
It's awesome.
Within the same universe, like expanding on the universe.
But don't change something that's not awesome. Like, when it works, stick with it. You know, Nickelback, one of, some people might say, one of the worst bands ever, or one of the best bands ever, depending how you look at them. They stuck with one song that had the same chords of every song.
Oh yeah,
and made a shitload of money because it worked. And people now are like, "Oh, you guys suck. It was only one song," and they're laughing their asses off in their mansions that are worth millions of dollars.
Yeah,
and dude, when it works, keep it.
I agree, and like part of this too for us is getting to schools. We've been really fortunate because of Jason's actually also got a teaching background, and so because of that, because of the link with Canadian elementary and high school curriculums, we've been in schools talking about the comic, but also talking about using the comic to explore history, or talking about graphic literacy, or whatever happens, art, like visuals, and so it's really fantastic because we get to not only look after or kind of tailor a product that's for a story loving comic audience, which we're also part of, but then we also get to get it to kids in a way, because again, it's not really there's a few, like the language in it is I think "goddamn" is like the worst kind of, it's one of those kind of.
Yeah, there's not much.
There's not much, right? Yeah, and there's no blood because it's black and white. But also, people die, but it's not splurts anywhere or splashes of, And so it's able to reach a younger audience, and teachers want it because they want to get kids interested specifically in history, and this is a way to do it. Or they want to get kids interested in storytelling. This is a way to do it, and we're more than happy to go. And so it's been really great to have this piece of it that was not completely unexpected, but certainly we didn't know if it would take. But it's been super great for that reason too.
Yeah, and I give credit to, and I wish I had the same type of people in my life, but I don't. Because when I did Chimera, which did for an indie, it did very well 8 years ago.
Sure.
But Kickstarter was different, and if I relaunched it now, if I did now what I had done then, Chimera would probably be in issue number 7 by now, because it was read by like 3,000 people, which is unheard of, and
incredible.
But social media wasn't what it was. Kickstarter sure as heck wasn't what it was. So there are people that want me to relaunch it, and we are going to
talk about it, that's great.
But my focus right now is on taking care of you guys to try to help you grow bigger. It's not as much about me. I feel like that can always happen, but I feel like now I need to grow the site and help you guys out. But besides that, I had to pay a buttload of cash for one issue. Each issue cost me about $6,000.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah. So So
Yep.
I couldn't generate it, and I was working right before I hired Bong and Marlon to do it. By the way, Bong in the United States is completely different than Thailand. Just putting it out there. He was from Thailand. So I wish that I could find somebody that is like, hey, I like the style. I match that style. I'll do it if you cut me in on it. And it's just, it's fine. It's harder and harder to find somebody because I don't have that relationship, right? You got lucky and you do. Now, at the same time,
agreed.
I have relationships in business that most people would die to know people. And I'm just like, hey, what's up, Mike? It's, to me, it's just like, whatever. And they're like, holy shit, you know him? I'm like, yeah, I mean, yeah. So everybody has those bonuses, and if I could find people that are quality, I have found a bunch of people that'll do my comic, and they are not good.
Right.
And I'm like, don't cut your teeth on my stuff. If you want to do it and you want to own part of it, great. But I think that's awesome that you could do it. Like, I'd be cranking out content like crazy if I couldn't. However, going back to the fact that we have families and kids and wives that, if the wife ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Yeah.
So
our wives that are fantastic and deserve more of our time. Yep.
Yes. Is she sitting right is she sitting right over here right now?
Not mine. She did wish me luck. She's very excited this is happening. So.
That's good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, my wife. I'm super happy that she's as supportive as she is.
Yeah,
because she knows this doesn't make me a lot of money. She knows it's a passion of love, and that I like helping people. Yeah. So I went upstairs and she's like, "You streaming tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got this cool interview." And she's like, "Good luck." Gave me a kiss. She said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I mean, it's that easy, but a lot of people don't have that. You have to have that support structure,
for sure,
or things fall apart really freaking fast. So,
well, of course, and
I mean, we're lucky. Do you find that you have to, knowing that you commute an hour each way?
Yeah.
So your time is even more limited potentially when you get home. So when do you write?
Well, this is the thing. I wrote in the commute. So originally, I trained it for a bit. And so I wrote basically the entire first draft of Group of 7 issues 1 to 6 on the train. Because I would have an hour in the morning, I have an hour in the evening. And especially in the morning, I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly my mind is clear, and I write better in the morning than after 2:00 or whatever it is. So I would just start writing notes, and I would talk the idea through with like my train mates who I commuted with, who went to the same location that I did, and it's so funny you mentioned. I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought up the '80s thing. I know I've said this before, but the reason I did is because I shout out to Rick. I don't know that he's listening, but Rick Smith. Shout out to Rick Smith because I was telling him this idea, this book, and I said I got 6 guys, but I want to call it Group of 7 because Group of 7 is just like one. Yes, it connects to the Canadiana stuff, but it's just a great title for 7 dudes. I was like 7 characters. I was like 7 Group of 7 makes sense. But I said, okay, so here's my character. I got like the leader. I got like the going through like our tropes, right? Like our 80s action movie tropes. I got the leader, I got the navigator, I got like the logistics guy, I got the medic.
You got your heavy, all these, your heavy gunner.
Okay, was this thing. So I said to him, I got a science guy, and I said, I'm missing one guy. And the guy goes, Rick goes, snaps and goes, you're missing a heavy. And I went, that's awesome. And I went, oh my God, you're so right. I'm missing a heavy. Like it was just,
gosh, where's your B.A. Baracus, man?
Right, you got it. So that became that turned into Conn Smythe, who's in the book. So Conn Smythe, for those who may not know, Conn Smythe started the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club.
Oh, that's awesome!
And if you're hockey fans out there, the Conn Smythe Trophy goes to playoff MVP and is often regarded as the hardest, most difficult individual award to win in professional sports because you got to be the playoff MVP through 16 playoff games. You got to win 16 times. Anyway, so Conn Smythe started in the Leafs, and so he's a soldier in the First World War, and he has a reputation. I mean, and it's documented that he was, irascible. He could be, not a very nice guy. He's, could be a bully, racist, all these kinds of things we could throw out about him, for sure. But he did serve in the First World War, and he also in the Second World War, when he's like, 50 and still running the Leafs, which is like a whole NHL franchise. Yeah. He's so dedicated to like his service that he re-signs back up and he like goes overseas again as like and gets injured. Like he's in both wars, which is insane. And so in that respect, I'm like, I just need a guy who will just punch people in the face first without saying anything as part of this.
Perfect.
And so it's, yeah, right. I need the Jesse Ventura from Predator. Like I need the
nicely said.
Right, I need that Gatling gun type guy. I ain't got time to bleed, like that perfect kind of. And he became the character, and he's been the most fun character to write and draw because it's that whole thing, just punch first, ask questions later. And so there's a panel in issue 5, I think, where Jason, he had so much fun because the Toronto Maple Leafs connection, we're both Leafs fans and we love having this guy in the book. And, he takes a punch in one panel and he's still looking at the guy while he takes it. Like he's just, you know what I mean?
I love it.
There's no cower. He's just like, you're going to get this one of these. Just you wait, man. Just you wait. Like it was just so much fun, right? Like, right. It's just the love of exploring those action tropes and like putting them in a book with all these other pieces that we love, I mean, but that's where I found the time was on the train, was writing it back and forth. And so the follow up, interesting, like I wrote issues 1 to 6 in a year, like a draft at least of everything in a year. And it's taken much longer. Now I know, to write the first couple or 3 issues of the next series, just because again, I don't train as much. I drive more because I do kind of like, drive to get the kids and pick up and drop off from schools and stuff. So life. So I don't have as much of that time, but man, when I had it, it was like unfettered me, personal. I'm looking outside of a train. I might as well write down some conversation or some script ideas.
That is awesome, dude. The amount of knowledge that you have in your brain blows me away. Like, I'm a relatively intelligent person, but I don't have that type of knowledge string. Like, you can ask me about business, you can ask me about marketing, you can ask me about sales and global strategies and like the stuff that other people would be like, how the hell do you know all that? Because I've designed my own engagement strategies and my own theorems and how they work and like all that stuff. Most people are like, you did what? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, and I go through the scientific methodology of it, and they're just like, what the hell's wrong with you? But so everybody has their thing. I'm never going to write a comic about that because that's boring. But you have this whole background of historical data in your brain. Yeah, that is awesome. Like, not a lot of people have that. You're like a historian that's cool. Like, normally you have to get a historian like in the movies. The historian's always the one that's like, buttoned up and stuff until you get them hammered or high, and then they just talk nonstop. It's
true.
So that's awesome.
Well, thank you. I know that stuff is always like, I loved all that stuff. So it's just, I think it just comes from a real place of love, and it stays in your head, stays in my head. So again, combining it all into this thing has been again. I didn't plan to do it. It just kind of happened, and it. The funny thing about it, going back to kind of the storytelling portion of it, is when I kind of finished the script, I kind of gave it to Jason, and he goes, "Oh, great, you're doing like the hero's journey," and I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And like, do you know the hero's journey? Mm-hmm. So here's your and it's a classic. It's templated, heroic stories, like going back to whether it's Odysseus or whether it's whatever. Yep. And so I knew about it, but I didn't know the title. I didn't know the term. And so he goes, "Yeah, I know." And and then he sent me something. He goes like, "Look at Star Wars," and he like shows all the points, and then they meet all these things. And I was like, "Oh my god!"
The discovery, the mentor, the fall, the realization,
all that stuff. All that stuff. And so then I made me think of how storytelling and certainly how absorption of stories, whether it's the 80s action movies, whatever, like they're templated in you, like they're hardwired into your DNA. So to certain respect. So when you are writing story, or you're trying to craft what you might think is a good story or an enjoyable story, or something that is connecting with audiences, you're like, well, it needs this now, and now it needs this, and now it needs this, and so I was kind of going through that on my own without fully realizing that what I was actually tapping into was something that is, again, probably hardwired from a story perspective in most of our brains already. Yeah. So it was kind of a cool process to kind of tease that out, and then go back to what just your point, the actual points in that journey, and then kind of either map them or add what was in there.
That's sick. I think that's awesome, and you hit it. When people were reading mine, I think, and we'll get into this in a second. The best compliment I got, because mine is more of like a psychological thriller. Cool. And the one thing, I got a bunch of compliments, which was very nice from a lot of people. Yeah. And it made me feel good and wanted me to do more until I remembered the $6,000, and that doesn't come along much. But the one thing that stuck out was somebody had said that it reminded him of Stephen King. And I was like, holy shit, really? Because I have read every Stephen King book. Right. Well, up until I started Spinwhiz, and then I had to, time wasn't really the essence anymore, or I didn't have much time anymore. But for somebody to say that, because that tells me that I have read so much Stephen King, and it is his storytelling style is so ingrained in my storytelling style, that it is not duplicative, but it at least runs off of that same line, just like the 80s. You know, if I were to write a comedy, I guarantee it would be closer to something like Weird Science or one of those without even knowing it, where they get into, you know, they get together. It's, you know, they're goofy. They get into trouble, you know, enter hot girl. They become heroes and everything is great at the end of the day. Ferris Bueller, same type of deal. I mean, I think we could probably go through like 15 or 16 without getting into like you know, John Cusack had a couple of those as well. I mean, you can't really do Pretty in Pink. You can't do like that.
Think of like the Goonies, like those kinds.
Oh, exactly.
You know, adventure type. You know, the stakes are real. Although you never really feel it as an audience. You always think the kids are going to come out because they're kids. But you know, and then there's like resolution in the end. They save the day, whatever. Their house doesn't get foreclosed or whatever. The country club doesn't get built. But but they all have those kind of key elements, right? Yep. And I think they're so relatable. Yep. And you know, so it becomes like, it's funny when I think of some of the stuff that I really enjoyed more recently, and they've definitely been homages to. When I think of like Stranger Things, as you know, watching the first season of Stranger Things,
so good,
and so much I loved about it. Aside from everything I loved about it, it's the idea, and Jason and I always talk about, like, kids on bikes, man. Just the trope of kids on bikes, right? Like going around the neighborhood and there's like a mystery, right? Like they're just kids on bikes, and so I loved. I still love to go into comics, Paper Girls, like Brian K. Vaughan's Paper Girls, because again, it's the same kind of girls on bikes, and they're, you know, mystery to solve, and that's how it starts. And so it's like that idea where it's localized in a way, because it's the world of that kid or those characters is never bigger than the 4 blocks that they inhabit, except it is big, and it's big to them, and it draws you. You know what I mean? It draws you in, and the kids on bikes thing is like, and so when Stranger Things came out, the kids were on their bikes like going there. I was like, oh my god! And then I don't know, too much to love there, right?
Well, true, but that's also E.T. That's also the Explorers.
Explorers, of course, yeah.
Back when River Phoenix was so young and little before he went off the deep end, which is so unfortunate because he was so freaking talented. You know, Goonies was a great one. Even if you went a little bit older and went to the Hardy Boys. For sure. Like that was the same thing. And yes, so I 100% agree. And you know what? I think that I want to write a series of short stories called Kids on Bikes.
It starts now.
And I think wow, holy cow! Google, for some odd reason, Google just picked up a whole bunch of children's stories called Kids on Bikes on my phone, and I don't even have that. That's weird.
That's another terrifying aspect of our technologies.
Holy shit, that's not right. No. So as a drill, real quick, because we've been chatting for almost an hour now. I told you that would happen.
Doesn't feel like it though, right?
No,
so I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It means that, you know, we're interesting and people like to talk to me, which is nice. I'll let my wife know later. People do like to talk to me all the time.
Pass that along.
That's right.
Yeah, and this guy's from Canada too. Like a Canadian says that.
But you Canadians can't be rude either. It is literally an impossibility.
You know, when you put out the tweet saying that we're going to be here talking, and it's the Dr. Evil, I didn't know if that was specially for me because it's Mike Myers, Canadian. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, man. I saw that. I was like, I wonder if that's for us. It is. I appreciate that.
I tried to get at least a little bit in there, and I saw it, and there was another GIF. I'm like, no, Myers is Canadian. But I didn't know that you'd recognize that, so I never brought it up. Like I have a lot of those little things that I try to do for people that shows that I actually care a little bit, but I never bring them out just because I don't want to sound like a dork either.
Yeah. No, it would
be like, you know,
noted and appreciated.
Yeah. Be like, you know what I did for you. Like, if you have to bring it out, it's not cool.
No, if you have to talk about it, it's not cool.
Right? Exactly.
That's the way coolness is, right? You can't talk about cool.
That's right.
And it's not cool anymore.
Yeah. So let's do a little drill real quick, and I do want to read a group of 7. Going back to archetypes,
Yeah.
And Goonies.
Yes.
This will be a Goonies thing. Let's name the archetypes out from Goonies, knowing what we do now as writers, to the best of our ability. So
Okay.
I'll name the characters off. If I miss anybody, let me know, and we have to say what archetype they are. And obviously, they don't have to be your strict 7 or 6 archetypes. Right. They can be what fill that gap, right?
Okay.
So, for instance, Mikey.
Yep.
Navigator.
Yeah, he's also the heart too, right? Like
Yeah.
Yes. He's the one who gets the map at the beginning, and he's
he's always the one with it.
I want to say he's not
your
the
driver
leader.
too.
He's the driver. I was gonna say he's the story driver, right? He drives the narrative forward for sure.
So maybe that is your heart because because it's One-Eye Willie and he starts crying and
he even gets to kiss the girl too, right? I mean,
but
unknowing.
That means there is no real navigator.
No.
So he's a dual class.
Yep.
Your heavy is obviously Brand.
He's gotta be Josh Brolin. Yeah, it's gotta be. Yeah.
And he's still a heavy.
Right.
Now,
sure. Aside from being like the older, wiser role, like mentor role, which is there too, right? He's definitely the heavy for sure.
And how are you he's like 60 and he's freaking ripped.
He's amazing. I can't say anything bad.
And his wife is like 27 years old. And he's like, yeah, she put me on this, and that's why I'm so cut and all that stuff. And I'm like, maybe it's because you're having sex with a 27-year-old.
It's possible.
I mean, that's got to keep you young or kill you.
I also think that, like, how crazy is it that, and I do love, like, the trajectories of, like, Hollywood careers of, like, how some people, like, disappear and they come back. And they're like, right, like, I think of, like, Jason Bateman.
Yeah.
Right? Jason Bateman what was the show he was sitcom he was on? Whatever. The Jason sitcom. And then he's away for like 10 years, and he like shows up for Arrested Development. Everyone's like, "Where'd Jason Bateman come from?"
Oh, what was that? It was,
what was that show
with him and his 2 brothers? He was the older brother.
Yeah. Because he was like in Teen Wolf 2, and that was a total flop. Like he did right. And so like, but Brolin's another example where he's got like Goonies and he's got some of these things, and then you don't hear from him for a long time, and then the last year he's both Cable and Thanos.
Yeah.
Like, what the.
Yeah, where the hell did you come from?
Where did
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like hey, more power to him, but like that's incredible.
Well, the kid that played Mikey,
Sean Astin.
Astin went from Goonies to pretty much disappearing to Rudy. Oh
right, Rudy. That's right. And then disappeared again.
Then disappeared again, and then came up as a second in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Then disappeared again, and popped up in Stranger Things.
Season 2, that's right, yeah. Like, and then when you see him, you're like, man, I love Sean Astin.
Yeah, every single time.
Why can't this guy just be on screen all the time? It's like,
because he makes buttloads of money when he has to.
Yeah, you're right. That's a freaky track record to be like in and out and in and out and in and out.
But everyone is like a blockbuster.
Right. Everyone is like a known and received well commodity. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's wild.
Maybe he's just ungodly smart. But anyway, so you have your heart / navigator. You have your heavy. Yep. So you need your demo guy.
Yep. Well, you got like I mean, Data is the he's like he's your research and development and science and
he's your
tech.
Q.
He's your gadget guy. Yeah, he's your gadget guy. He's your Q. Right, exactly.
Yep. So he's you got him. You need a medic.
Yep.
I think I know who that one is.
The medic of the Goonies. So who's left? Well, we know who's left. Mouth, Chunk, and Martha Plimpton, and Andy. I don't know. I would like to hear who
I would say it's Martha. She's the only one that is not medical, like wrapping them up, but therapy-wise. She's the only one who she talked to Andy and got him going. She talked to Mouth and restructured him. Like,
she's a voice of reason. Yes. She has like a voice of reason aspect, right?
Yep,
for sure.
It's like she's babysitting, but she's not getting paid. You
got it. You nailed it. Right there, you go.
So
it's like you write this. It's like you wrote the script, man.
Yeah, right. That'll happen. So then you have your female lead / love interest, which is Andy.
Yeah, you got the
obviously.
Yeah, Andy. Yep.
And then you have your loudmouth, shoot first, ask questions later, which is Mouth. And then your comic relief,
comic relief,
which is Chunk.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Well, comic relief / heart too, because he really you fell in love with that character among all the other ones.
And he plays that role where he really does, his actions kind of save the day, because he brings Sloth into the fold, right? So he brings that element, and Sloth saves them all at the end when he's Captain Chunk. Yep. And so I think that's almost I want to say part of the story too often is like sacrificial. There's often someone who doesn't make it, right? Mm-hmm. And then but the actions the sacrifice allows the story to continue, or whatever happens to be. Mm-hmm. And so there's an element of that, because he is captured, right? Like he is, and has his hand in the Fratellis, right? Like he is captured and gets out on his wits, and then this bond, this human bond, and with a character who is an undesirable, if we want to. Yep. A character who is left in a chains, and so he's the sacrifice, but he just doesn't die. He comes back and saves the day. Yep.
I mean, that's why I was going with Mikey as the navigator, who's keeping pushing the map, and you have Chunk, who's the heart, who kind of trains the savage beast and becomes the friend. But again, I could see it being both. Right. Because really, there's two. Sure. It becomes two stories at one point in time, and then they reconverge into something on the Fratellis at the end. So this just means we have we had a lot of free time on our hands in the 80s. The 80s were fantastic. I try to tell my son, I'm like, you missed
man.
He loves the Goonies now, and that's fantastic. Yeah. He loves Ghostbusters. Also fantastic.
That's a go-to for us.
And you have your other one too. So there's your fast talking loudmouth, which is Peter Venkman.
Yeah, Venkman.
Then you got your techie nerd, which is Egon.
Yep.
And then you have your lover, like the loving kind of cute doofy guy, which is also your comic relief, because he does crazy
Acrid race dance.
Yep.
And for sure.
And you can add your love interest right there. Mm-hmm. And then Rick Moranis is kind of he's that guy in chains. He's the outlier of the whole thing that kind of gets brought in.
Yeah. Yeah, like the kind of outcast, the kind of whatever that is, the character who is then brought into the fold. Yeah, and becomes kind of part of that, and then you've got a guy like Zedmore, who is kind of the grounding influence often, because he's like, I don't even know what these guys are doing. Like, I just signed up for a steady paycheck
in for me. I'll believe in anything you want.
Exactly. So he's the one that you actually relate to as a person who is caught up in these extraordinary circumstances, because the other three are already parapsychologists and trying to do their own stuff, but he is the one that is the connection point to reality.
He plays a great character also. It's so well written.
It's great,
and he does such a good job of not being not the dumb guy.
No, he's a straight man, right? He is the straight man. In the comedic beat, he's the straight man for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, he is. Absolutely. Oh God, so awesome. And he's going to be in the new one too. So they signed all the guys.
They all are, right? They're back, right?
But instead of making cameos like in Ghostbusters, whatever the hell that was in 2016, they're actually in it. They're as Venkman as I did love when I saw that trailer. A couple of things. I loved him. Again, there's the kid on bike element, right? They're kind of, but they're in there's that. I'm loving that they're probably. I mean, it's the legacies between it's Jay Reitman, right? Or Jason Reitman who's doing it. Yeah,
and so it's Ivan Reitman, right? So you got that. Yep. It's clearly Harold Ramis, has died, and so it's clearly Egon has gone and stockpiled all his stuff somewhere in Iowa. So I'm down with that. And Paul Rudd, I'm super down with that.
Oh yeah, why he is
right?
not?
Paul Rudd is the teacher.
How has he not aged?
Oh, that's a whole other. It's as as mysterious as Josh Brolin being 60 and
It's
having
true.
a body like that. He is ageless, Paul Rudd. He has clearly found some kind of like stone or gem
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
in a cave.
Yeah.
So, he's found that thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he just, maybe something on him is just really, really old. Like maybe the
Right.
rest of him's really
Right.
like whatever, but he, has to go to the bathroom and sit all the time because he's got like
Right.
really old crusty balls or something. Like
Something
but
we
I
wouldn't
I
expect.
can't dislike the guy because he's so good at every role he
He's-
plays. And
he's
I heard
so charming.
I heard he's a nice person as well, which is even better.
Well, see that, and then that makes you even feel even more, like warmer. You're like, man, that guy's great.
And not
Just wanna-
Canadian,
that-
amazingly enough.
Surprisingly.
I mean, I would think that's a Canadian, to be honest with you. What's up, Bam? How are you, baby? So anyway,
Yeah.
I think we could deconstruct most of this at a whole nother. I think we should have another podcast or another stream or whatever. And what we do
I'm down with it, man.
is we call it deconstructing the 80s. And we go through like just our top 5 80s movies because
Right.
and I think we leave Star Wars and Star Trek out.
Yeah, they're almost too big to even tackle, right? Like, and they're
Yeah.
also the tangents and the legacies are. I think you'd have to. The scope would have to be much more manageable. I think.
Yeah. And I think we could probably even, well, I don't want to cherry pick it in the 90s. What was Lost Boys? Lost Boys was
These 80s, Lost Boys
80s.
80s.
Yeah, because obviously you had the two
The Frog Brothers.
Yeah.
You had, for sure.
and one of them no longer around, unfortunately.
That's right.
The other one thinks he's Michael Jackson.
And shows up to cons, which is also really interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Like going full loop on our having access to these folks at like cons and things is really a thing that I find both absurd and fantastic.
Yeah. I don't know
You
if
know?
both of them dated Nicole Eggert or not.
Oh, I don't know.
But the what the heck is that kid's name? They're not. Are they Chris's? Were they both Chris?
Oh, yeah, you're talking two Corys. No, Corey Haim and
Corey Haim and Corey
Yeah,
Feldman.
two Corys.
So Corey Haim.
License to Drive. Yeah.
Yes. And so Corey Haim was the one that passed away, correct? From
Yes.
Yes. Drug overdose, I think, or
I
something
believe
like
so,
that.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
got to see Nicole Eggert naked. And for those of you who don't know, Nicole Eggert was famed in Charles in Charge, and then
Oh, right.
went like super hot babe in Baywatch.
It's crazy.
And in between that was this movie that I can't remember the name of that they were both in. All
Mm-hmm.
three of them were in it. Nicole Eggert and Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were all in it. It was a murder mystery movie,
Okay.
and Corey Haim and Nicole Eggert, that's the only time she ever got naked, was in that movie. And I didn't know. Like it was a joyous surprise to me because I didn't know. I was just
Right.
an 80s buff, so I'm like, I want to watch this.
Sure.
And I was just like, oh my. Hello.
Well, the '80s just keeps surprising, I guess.
I mean, the 80s is full of surprises that were all fantastic. And again, going back to telling my son how great the 80s were, my wife, while she looks like she's 29, is my age. She just nods, and because she's a music buff.
Okay.
So all of the music from the 80s, and it just doesn't have to be hair band. There was a ton of great music.
Tons, amazing, yeah.
And I'm like, you can't, that decade, except for maybe the Roaring 20s, that decade was the best. And some people will say, well, the 60s because of the hippies. I'm like, you smoked your way through that, so that doesn't really count.
There's something unbridled about the '80s.
Yeah.
That, like, there's no regulation on anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no
Yes.
like the government literally lifts regulation on things. Like, I think of like animation, like Transformers and GI Joe, where there was that actual
Thundercats.
the Reagan, right, and the actual government policy that before you couldn't make a toy line that was based on it. Like, it was television.
Yes.
On television, you had to have one before the other, and they like flipped it, and suddenly like all the walls were broken down. And then we're like, we're gonna do like Transformers, and then there's gonna be GoBots, and then there's gonna be like Visionaries, and then there's gonna be Thundercats, and it's just gonna get nuts and nuts and nuts.
Oh, it went crazy.
You know, right? I think like breakfast cereals. Come on,
Oh.
like they're like the monster group, right? The Frankenberry and Count Chocula, and like they have a name for their name.
The Boo.
Anyway.
Was it a Boo
Yeah,
Berry?
Boo Berry. It was Boo Berry. Yeah. But like again, it feels like no other decade could do that. It's like it all came in one, and by the end of it, everyone was like, "That was crazy. We should never do that again."
Yeah.
Like,
please don't. We need Billy Madison right
like,
now.
Right now, it can't never happen again.
And it really did switch from the 80s to 90s.
Yeah.
There was a drastic shift in entertainment, and it was right around that 89 to 91 area where you started getting more comedies like all the Adam Sandler movies started coming out.
Yep.
Swingers came out. Airheads came out.
Yep.
Like it was but they all referenced the 80s.
Yeah.
But they were 90s movies that had a different spin on it.
Very much so. And then we went into that weird, well, not weird, but we went to that like alternative, 92, 94 phase where like things like Reality Bites was like a big thing, and like the kind of campus college radio type thing. And they were already big in the 80s, but they really did get their due in the early 90s. And I think, and then obviously like, it's pretty seismic with Nirvana and those other kinds of pieces, kind of basically destroying like the hair metal scene. And like, kind of like, yeah, right. Like, I mean, there was a big shift, like in those early few years of the 90s, of whether it's rejection, whether it's just different art form evolving, whatever it was, but a real change from, and it's probably more seismic than we think it is. But I think it's a big, like that. I don't think you can say, oh, the 2010s to the 2010s was like seismic, but you could say the 80s and 90s are like, there was a lot of change going on.
Yeah, except for maybe internet and smartphones.
Right. So maybe it's technology based.
That was a tech change. But well, I'll say right now, music at the current moment in time that is on top 40 is top shit. I can't understand half the things they're saying. It doesn't sound like music to me.
Right.
And that doesn't mean I was talking to my wife. We were going through who was on the Grammys tonight.
Oh yeah, sure.
And we're like, wait, who's that? And we went through and we only knew like 3 people: Alicia Keys, Boyz II Men, and somebody else.
And Boyz II Men have been around since when we were
right. I mean, Motown Philly's back again,
which is great to hear for them, and also a great song. So
I agree. So all right, well, listen, we are going on almost an hour and a half.
Whew.
But obviously we have tons more to talk about. Can I do a quick snippet of the synopsis?
Yeah.
Is there a certain way you just want me to rip it up, or would you be like, hey, I want to hear this type of voice, and I'll try to mimic it?
I just want to, whatever voice you think fits.
All right,
I think it's
let's do it.
Probably the voice that I'm thinking too.
Let's do it the first time, and if you're like, Jeff, could you do it in this? I'll try to do it in that too, because
sure,
maybe not, but all right. So again, for everybody listening or watching, this is a synopsis that was written by Chris for Group of 7. This is actually under Group of 7 number 1. So there's 6 issues. It's all out in Spinwhiz right now. 1, 2, and 3 are able to be read. 4, 5, and 6 is I think maybe $1.99. I think, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And I
think so. Yeah.
Everything goes right back to Chris and Jason, $1.49. So they can make more comics. So if you like it, hook the guys up. That's all it is.
Please do.
And then we have more stuff coming in February that Chris and I spoke about before the show. I'll be announcing that when we're closer, but that will help a lot too. So anyway, this is a synopsis of Group 7. Artillery. That's what John McCrae signed up for. Medical was something he did back at home in Canada. Poetry had always been his escape, but in Flanders Fields changed all that. Besides, there was no escape from the war to end all wars, and this war still needed a hero. Or 7.
Chills. You should try, you know what? Because he talks about it, you should try it as Dr. Evil.
Oh my God. Okay.
If you can. I don't know. Try it.
I'm going to try it. I think that's great.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if I can, so we'll try it.
All right.
Artillery. That's what John McCrae signed up for. Medical was something he did back home in Canada. Poetry had always been his escape, but in Flanders Fields changed all that. Besides, there was no escape from the war to end all wars. And this war still needed a hero. or 7.
Perfect.
Not a great Dr. Evil, but
I thought it was okay.
off the cuff. I mean, that's pretty much what I got for you. And that is
I just kept thinking of liquid hot magma when you're reading.
Liquid hot magma. Or 7. Yeah. That's the first time I've ever done that on anything, really. So that's a first here on the Spinwhiz Comics Show with Chris Sanagan. Just the way it happens, I guess. I wish more interviews were like this. Bam says I might get wet or might be wet. He liked it so much, and then he actually is laughing out loud from his text of LOL from the other part.
Love it.
So let's see if we can get some YouTube comments on that, and maybe in the next show, whatever it is, I'll do more voices with the synopsis. We are eventually. Once the things we spoke about, you and I spoke about, come to fruition, that we're actually going to try to do read-throughs. Like, I'll actually bring people in. You'll be the director, and we're actually going to read through issue 1 together. So we'll dry read it first. And you won't see us. You'll just see the comic on the site, on the interview.
Okay.
And then the first is just a dry read-through for everybody. The second, you're giving us direction on the first to see how we want to go. The second is a real read through, and the third, the community gets to change our voices and or characters. So you could be like, no, I want Jeff to play, whoever, instead of read for this role and make them sound like the Swedish chef. Yeah.
Exactly. You gotta take this seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
load your weapons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we are definitely going to have another extravaganza between us because I think that's fantastic, and we'll do.
All right, man.
We will just not tear down in a bad way, 80s movies that we love. And we will dissect them, and it'll be called Reconstruction of the 80s. And the whole time we'll just be shooting the shit. I would suggest if you are you a drinker at all? Do you prefer any beverage?
I do. A lot of
like
them,
a Canadian whiskey type thing, or are you okay drinking scotches, bourbons? Like, what do you like? What's your poison?
I mean, at the moment, I think. I lean more towards bourbon, more so because my in-laws live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and so often we drive down through Kentucky and Tennessee I-75 to get there, and I've brought back many a bourbon that I cannot get here. So, absolutely,
bourbon it is. Bourbon in the 80s, reconstructing the 80s. We're gonna get hammered. So by the end, we'll have to. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I think that's a good 2-hour special. And
that is.
Yeah, and if Jason is a big 80s guy too,
he is.
It might be that we just do I'll put all 3 of us on. Get a Zoom thing going.
Yeah. I'll run it by him.
And since he hasn't been in this, he's going to be like, "What the hell did I get into him?" And I'll be like, if you're not drinking, don't show up. Like, it's just, you have to be too deep just to get in. Like, we'll do a couple shots right out of the gate, and then it's game time. And then it's nighttime. And
then let's be fair, we're old, so it's nighttime.
The truth.
And then it's, right?
Yeah, maybe this is going to be a special Saturday special. That way we don't have to wake up and go to work at the ass crack.
I was going to say, it's got to be scheduled specifically. Yeah.
Well, anyway, buddy, it was awesome chatting with you. I mean, simply fantastic. For those of you that did not get that link, don't worry. It's down below. Make sure you check it out. Is your trade paperback for 1 through 6 going to be on Kickstarter, or is it just going to be straight up sale?
No, well, you haven't made the final decision yet. I think it's an option to go to Kickstarter to start that process, but we also might just be able to fund it through other means. So I'll let you know if it does go to Kickstarter, and it'd be great to share the link if that's something that happens. But at the same time, we might just take pre-orders, truthfully, and see how that goes too. So we've got a fairly good. We work with a fairly. We like our printer we have in Toronto, and we like the rates that we get, and so it's something that we think we we might be able just to kind of make happen sooner rather than later. But we do like Kickstarter as an option too, so we'll see.
Let me know. It'll be great.
I will,
but,
man, for sure.
So hang on the line for me, ladies and gentlemen. Sure. Chris Sanagan, Group of 7. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you read it. It's down below, or it's in the chat, or whatever.